Hey team, hope you're all doing well. Today's topic, I wanted to go over why Zone 2 training is important. And a lot of times we focus a lot on so much of our attention on the speed aspect of our preparation, getting ready, developing our leg speed, improving our ability to clear lactic acid, and also to recruit those fast twitch muscle fibers that we need to make sure that we get race pace to feel easier for us. But Zone 2 training is still vital to become a better middle to long distance runner. One of the biggest benefits is you increase mitochondria density, as well as you also improve your fat utilization and our ability to preserve glycogen. Okay, that's why I always say, you don't necessarily have to hit the so-called wall in your races. Okay, when I ran 2:19 for the marathon, I didn't hit a wall at all. Even when I ran 2:26 at Indianapolis, I didn't hit a wall at all. And so your preparation and how much time you're spending at Zone 2 is very important. Zone 2 training intensity, you're running around 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. So my recommendation is focus first on getting to a point where you can run 20 minutes at Zone 2 and work your way up toward an hour. Okay, that's Zone 2 training is kind of close to tempo effort, okay, versus lactic threshold or your anaerobic threshold where you're running much higher. You're running around 85 to around 90% of your max heart rate. When you're running at Zone 2, you're running around 65 to 75% of max heart rate. So it's closer to tempo effort, and it's not quite as intense as lactate threshold or anaerobic threshold effort. So you can spend much more amounts of time training at Zone 2 versus running at, say, VO2 max effort, where you're running between 95 and 100% of your max heart rate. When you're running, VO2 max, you're going to be running several seconds to maybe up to around a few minutes, versus running at Zone 2, where really, if you put in enough work and you put in a strong aerobic base, you can work your way up to running closer to an hour or slightly above an hour at Zone 2. But Zone 2 is very important because, again, we want to make sure that we preserve glycogen capability so that in the race we can rely more on what we have much more of, which is fat storage. We have so much fat storage versus glycogen storage. We want to be able to conserve that and be able to call upon that glycogen storage in the later stages of our race. If you're running a 5K on the roads, you want to make sure that, yes, you have something more to call upon in that last few kilometers or the last mile or two of the race, especially in the longer races where, you definitely want to make sure you don't want to run out of glycogen too early in the race. That's why I always say in these longer races, it's so important to make sure that you're paying attention to hydration, practicing better drinking in your long runs during training, ingesting some gels, getting some calories in you while you're doing your long runs so that when you get to the race, you will have practiced that over and over again. But if you're not running, the majority of the training we do is running around Zone 2 effort, okay? The fitter you get, the more advanced you get in the sport, the faster you're wanting to run, you do have to start changing up your tactics. As mentioned in other videos, double threshold training, which is very difficult to do because, again, you're doing 2 threshold efforts in one day. And so I always say, if you're going to do double threshold training, don't even start to attempt to do that type of workouts if you have not built a strong aerobic base first. Okay, so you want to be several weeks into a aerobic base, or you want to be several weeks into a buildup before you start thinking about doing double threshold training. But Zone 2 training, and why Zone 2 training is important, is we want to teach the body to improve its lactate tolerance, to be able to sustain our goal race pace for a longer period of time, preferably longer than our competition, and to, again, improve fat utilization. So we want to utilize what we have a ton more of, which is fat storage, versus using what we have much less of, glycogen storage, sugars, and we go way too anaerobic in our race too early, and then we're forced to have to slow down in the race in the second half. That's why I always say, do the best you can in your races to run a negative split rather than going and do a positive split. You still can go out and set a new PR running a positive split. Even when I ran 219, I went out the first half in 107.09 and came back with a 112.25. So I was drastically slower in that second half than I was in the first half. But if you've done your homework and training, you still can run a positive split. You have a massive amount of buffer in terms of the amount of time you can make up in that second half. You can slow down, but it's much better to run a negative split if you can, to be a little bit more conservative rather than going out 3 seconds fast, 3 seconds slower than your best half marathon like I did. My PR is 107.06. I went out 107.09. It's a smarter move to go out much slower in the first half and come back much faster. So again, if you've trained sufficiently at zone 2 for a long enough period of time, when I was in peak shape, I would do tempo runs up to around 16 kilometers or about around 10 miles in length. Okay, that's a long time to run at tempo effort. But zone 2 training is vital because, again, over a long period of time, several weeks, several months, once you start to drop down your volume, you drop your intensity, and you go into that 10-day taper that I talk about, your body starts to regenerate and heal up from all those several months of anaerobic training you've done. And you will have gone in, again, if you've done proper speed training, you focused on hill repetitions, you focused on running down toward your 3K to 5K race pace. If you're training for, say, a 10K, half marathon, if you've spent sufficient time training at those types of intensities, on top of doing zone 2 training for longer periods of time, you're going to be able to sustain race pace for a longer period of time. It's not going to feel as aggressive to you versus when you first start off in your buildup. Again, and zone 2 training is a big reason for your ability to handle much higher amounts of lactic acid, and more importantly, your body's ability to clear it or lactate clearance capacity. You want to be able to improve that. You're not going to improve lactate clearance capacity by just running aerobic running for long periods of time. Yes, you will build endurance and burn fat and teach the body to burn fat more effectively. But if you're training at zone 2, which again is around 65-75% of max heart rate, that's going to be very important to, one, teach the body to clear lactic acid more economically, more efficiently, but more importantly, build that stamina and strength that you're going to need in these longer races. And I think also paying attention to the mental training component of preparation is absolutely essential. So many athletes, we always focus on zone 2 training, VO2 max training, anaerobic threshold training, but a lot of times we neglect what's equally as important, which is mental rehearsal. It doesn't take but about 10 minutes a day, but just kind of visualizing yourself performing at a level that you're dreaming about. Okay, if it's breaking a 3-hour marathon or breaking 35 minutes for 10K or running under 2 hours for the half marathon, or maybe breaking an hour and 20 minutes for the half marathon, you have to see that. You have to visualize that. You have to train your subconscious mind, train your mind like you're training your body. So you're spending all this time focusing on zone 2 training, which is still vital, but if you're only doing 50% of the work, if all you're doing is just spending time training physically, okay, it's also what are you doing after the track workouts, after the road sessions? What are you doing in terms of, are you getting enough sleep? Are you staying up late? Are you drinking enough fluid before, during, and after your workouts? Are you mentally rehearsing? Okay, some of the world's top runners that I was fortunate enough to be trained with, and lived with, some of the world-class, some world-class Kenyans I've trained with, sub 4-minute milers, athletes that could run under 2:10 for the marathon, 2:08 marathoners, athletes that ran under 60 minutes for the half marathon. These types of athletes had a very strong mindset in terms of what they were doing. They're extremely disciplined, razor-sharp focused on what they wanted, and they weren't just focusing on physical zone 2 training. but also they were looking at what do they want to do in terms of their preparation long term. They were always visualizing success. They were always not spending very much time on disappointments. So they got over poor performances either in workouts or in races. They were always looking forward to the next workout, the next race. So that's very important. You have to make sure that you maintain your enthusiasm. In Zone 2 training, if you're doing it sufficiently, it'll keep you recovered from the workouts you're doing. You want to also spend some time in Zone 1 as well, obviously to recover. Okay, it's critical. You can't just run fast all the time and expect to get faster. So I hope this video is important in terms of why Zone 2 training is important. If you have any other questions or concerns, leave me a comment below. Please like these videos. I really appreciate it. There's a little like button down below. If you hate the video, hit the downvote. It's fine too. It all helps with the YouTube algorithm. But I really appreciate your support in watching these videos. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so when I make a new video, you'll be notified of it. And if you have not yet subscribed, hit that bell icon and the subscribe button. So each time I make a new video or a new video comes up, YouTube will notify you of that. So I wish you guys and gals all the very best in your training, and I will talk to you all in the next video.